A couple weeks ago, I did a video about the last time every single MAC school had a quarterback drafted, and it did really well, and you guys absolutely loved it. So we're going to go ahead and do the same exact thing, but this time for the Mountain West Conference. There were some surprises on this list, as there were a couple players I had no idea about, or there were certain things I was stunned about. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the last time every Mountain West school had a quarterback drafted. Okay, so honestly I did not expect this. Boise State's last quarterback drafted was Jim McMillan in 1975. The last time they had a guy drafted was not David Zabransky, it was not Kellen Moore, and it was not any of the other handful of good quarterbacks Boise has had recently. Yeah, it was Jim McMillan back in 1975. Boise State also only has one jersey number retired in their history, and he was the starting quarterback for the Broncos from 1972 to 1974, back when they were members of the Big Sky Conference. His first season he threw for 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, but ended up being the backup, and Boise State went 7-4. He was the starter for their full season in 1973, helping lead the Broncos to a 10-3 record and a top 5 ranking in Division II. Jim ended up throwing for 1,500 yards and 17 touchdowns, and it was a similar result in 1974, with the Broncos finishing at 10-2, and Jim throwing for 1,900 yards and 33 touchdowns. While at Boise State, he set multiple school and Big Sky Conference records and was an All-American in 1974. He was eventually drafted by the Detroit Lions in the 14th round of the 1975 draft, but never played it down for the Lions, and ended up just playing one season of professional football in 1975 with the Hamilton Tiger Cats of the CFL before dropping out of football entirely. Okay, so the last time Fresno State had a quarterback drafted was Jake Haener back in 2023. He originally committed to Washington in 2017 and would sit behind Jake Browning. He eventually transferred to Fresno State in order to get more playing time, and he finished his time in Seattle with 169 yards, a touchdown, and an interception off the bench. Because he had to sit out a year, he was out all of 2019, and would eventually become the starter for the Bulldogs in 2023, and went 3-3 as a starter, throwing for 2,000 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 5 picks. He'd have his best season of his career in 2021, throwing for 4,096 yards, 33 scores, and 9 picks. Late in the season though, he entered the transfer portal to find another opportunity, and because he was playing so well, he decided to come back and play for Washington. Well, actually that didn't happen, as he then transferred back to Fresno State, and in 10 games in 2022, he threw for 2,900 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 3 picks. He was drafted by the New Orleans Saints in the 4th round of the 2023 draft, and so far he's had an interesting NFL career. He failed a physical, so he was out all of 2023, and then before the 2024 season started, he got skin cancer. But he still made the roster, and so far in 2024, he's played a little bit in relief of Derek Carr. But if you're as convicted as I am about a certain bet, be sure to place your bet with MyBookie. This season, MyBookie is pulling out all the stops with incredible promotions like a weekly risk-free boost on Thursdays where you can bet without a sweat. If your bet hits, you win big. If it doesn't, forget it. MyBookie will refund your wager. But that's just the beginning. MyBookie is giving away hundreds of thousands in prizes with their Super Survivor and Square contests. Get your entries now in for your shot at huge cash rewards. When you're ready to get started, be sure to use my promo code Fisher50 and make sure to get some extra cash on top of your first deposit. If you type in Fisher50, you'll get up to $1,000 in a welcome bonus bet plus a $10 casino chip. MyBookie's tiered bonuses make it easy to deposit with crypto or with credit, and the bigger your deposit, the bigger your bonus. The bonus would be 100% match up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip. With MyBookie, you can bet on anything, anywhere, at any time, and make your season a winning season. Be sure to check out my link down below and use my promo code Fisher50. Next up is Colorado State's Garrett Grayson back in 2015. The last time the Rams had a QB drafted was Grayson, as he was actually pretty highly recruited coming out of the state of Washington and was immediately one of the better quarterbacks on the Rams roster as a true freshman in 2011. He ended up starting 3 games, finishing the year with 542 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 6 picks. Not good. He was then entrenched as a starter for the Rams in 2012, but got injured in Week 5 against Air Force, and finished the year playing only 6 games, throwing for 946 yards with 7 touchdowns and 3 picks. He was the full-time starter in 2013, helping the Rams to an 8-6 record and a win over Washington State in their bowl game. He threw for a school record 3,696 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 11 picks. He reset the records again his senior year in 2014, throwing for over 4,000 yards, 32 scores, and 7 touchdowns. He left Colorado State as their all-time passing leader, and he was drafted by the Saints in the 3rd round of the 2015 draft. He'd never find the field with the Saints behind Drew Brees though, and he'd end up signing with the Falcons practice squad in 2017, and after that spent some time in Denver as a backup before retiring from football entirely in 2019. Oh boy, this one's going to be fun. The last time Nevada had a quarterback drafted was Colin Kaepernick in 2011. He was a standout high school baseball player in California, but chose to sign with Nevada, who was the only school that offered him a football scholarship out of high school. He was a backup his first season in 2007, but still finished the year with 2,100 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 3 picks off the bench. The next year as a sophomore, he threw for 2,800 yards with 22 touchdowns, and he also ran for over 1,000 yards and 17 scores. His junior year in 2009, he was also terrific, as he threw for 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns, as well as once again running for 1,200 yards and 16 scores on the ground. In 2010, he helped Nevada to one of their best seasons in school history by throwing for 3,022 passing yards, 21 passing touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. He also, for the third straight year, ran for over 1,000 yards on the ground, and this time had 20 rushing touchdowns and helped them have that iconic win over Boise. He was drafted by the 49ers in the second round of the 2011 draft, and he sat out most of that season and didn't see significant playing time with the Niners until Alex Smith got hurt. He quickly became one of the best dual threats in the league until Coach Harbaugh left for Michigan, and the Niners had some bad coaches. He ended up dropping out of the league entirely by 2018, and despite trying to make it back a few times, he finished his NFL career at 12,271 yards, 72 touchdowns, and 30 interceptions. There's obviously a big gray area I'm not talking about in the video, because I'm not going to give my opinion on that whole situation, but it does seem like there was a stalemate from both the NFL and Kaepernick on getting a deal done, and I don't really know where the truth lies. Probably the most successful quarterback on this list is Randall Cunningham. He was the last quarterback drafted from UNLV back in 1985, as he was a somewhat well-recruited quarterback coming out of Santa Barbara, and ended up at UNLV to play quarterback and punter. Despite being more well-known as a QB, he made the College Division All-American team in 1983 and 84 as a punter, not a quarterback. But he was one of the better players in the Pacific Coast Athletic Association after leading the Rebels to an 11-2 season in 1984, and this was also their best season in school history. He was then drafted by the Eagles in the second round of the 1985 NFL Draft, and with the Eagles he started out as a backup before taking over as the full-time starter in 1987 after being a package quarterback before that. He used his great speed and strong arm to baffle NFL defenses after he kind of struggled with interceptions early on in his career. He led the Eagles to the 1988 NFC divisional game, but otherwise couldn't bring the Eagles any further. In 1997, he joined the Vikings and played there until he joined the Cowboys in 2000 and the Ravens in 2001. He finished a 16-year NFL career with almost 30,000 passing yards, 207 touchdowns, and 134 interceptions. He also ran for over 5,000 yards and 35 scores on the ground, as well as 4 Pro Bowls. The last quarterback to be drafted from New Mexico was Stoney Case back in 1995. Stoney was a 4-year starter for the Lobos after redshirting his first year in 1990. Despite playing for a mediocre team in New Mexico, Stoney was one of the best quarterbacks in college football history by the time he graduated. He became the first player in FBS history to have over 9,000 passing yards and 1,000 rushing yards in a career, as he posted 98 total touchdowns, which was second all-time at that point. He finished his college career with 9,460 passing yards, 67 touchdowns, and 31 rushing scores. He was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals in the third round of the 1995 NFL Draft, and he didn't succeed in Arizona though. He bounced between the Colts and Ravens in 1999 before finishing his NFL career with the Lions in 2000 as he backup to Charlie Batch. He then finished his career with 1,800 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. After that, though, he spent some time in arena football before retiring from the sport in 2008. The last quarterback drafted from San Diego State was Ryan Lindley in 2012. He starred at El Capitan High School in California before joining the Aztecs in 2007 and sitting behind Kevin O'Connell at quarterback. The next year, though, he started 11 games for the Aztecs, throwing for 2,653 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 9 picks. He started all 12 games his redshirt sophomore year in 2009, where he threw for over 3,000 yards and 23 scores and 16 picks. The next year in 2010, his 3,800 yards and 28 touchdowns helped lead the Aztecs to their first bowl game in 12 years, where they would beat Navy 35-14. His senior year, though, he finished with 3,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 8 picks. He was then drafted by the Arizona Cardinals in the 6th round of the 2012 NFL Draft, and the Cardinals were a terrible team if you remember. He shared starting duties with John Skelton, I'm pretty sure none of you guys remember, and he threw no touchdowns and 7 picks. From there, he spent some time with the Chargers practice squad before returning to Arizona after Carson Palmer got hurt in 2014. He didn't do much better there, but did help the Cardinals make the playoffs. After flaming out with the Patriots and Colts in 2015, he ended up with the Ottawa Red Blacks in the CFL in 2017, but he was out of football entirely by 2019, and he ended his NFL career with a total of 1,700 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. Also to make a note, Air Force has never had a quarterback drafted, so that's why we're not talking about them. For San Jose State, though, the last time they had a quarterback drafted was David Falls in 2014. He originally signed with Nevada as a 2-star recruit in 2009, but since he wasn't a scrambler, he transferred to Monterey Peninsula College. From there, he transferred to San Jose State for the 2012 season and became one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the country for the Spartans, finishing the 2012 regular season throwing for 3,800 yards with 31 touchdowns and helped them to their first ever BCS ranking and their first bowl game since 2006. He finished 2013 with 4,200 yards and 33 scores, but no bowl game despite going 6-6. He was then drafted by the Chicago Bears in the 6th round in 2014, and after bouncing back and forth between Chicago's active roster and practice squad, he ended up with the Dolphins for the 2017 season. Miami was where he played the most snaps, including playing in one game where he threw for 255 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. He spent 2019 with the Lions and Jets before retiring from football altogether in 2021. He finished his career with a total of 287 passing yards, a touchdown, and an interception. The last quarterback to be drafted from Utah State was Jordan Love back in 2021. His only FBS offer coming out of Liberty High School in California was Utah State, so that's where he went. After redshirting in 2016, Love played in 12 games for the Aggies in 2017. He finished with 1,600 yards and 8 touchdowns, but had 6 picks. In 2018, he threw for a school record 3,567 yards and 32 touchdowns, while also leading Utah State to an 11-2 record and a poll ranking. But his head coach Matt Wells left for Texas Tech after the year, and Utah State tanked around him. He threw for just 3,400 yards with 20 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. Despite that, many thought he was Mahomes 2.0, and he was selected by the Green Bay Packers in the first round of the 2020 draft just to sit behind Aaron Rodgers for a few years. He didn't come to be the starter for the Packers until 2023 when they traded Aaron to the Jets. He threw for 4,100 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 11 picks, and has so far returned as a starter in 2024. And while he was battling an injury, he's back and the starter in Green Bay, and honestly good for him. Many thought he'd be a bust for a while. The second to last team we need to talk about is Wyoming's Josh Allen, who was back in 2017. After being under-recruited in high school, he ended up at Reedley Community College in 2014, where he exploded offensively, and he ended up at Wyoming for the 2015 season. After getting injured early in 2015 and not really doing much, he became the team's starter in 2016, throwing for 3,200 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 15 picks. He came back the next year and threw for 1,800 yards and 16 scores, and despite not being that good, honestly, he was drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the first round of the 2017 draft due to his insane arm and mobility. So yeah, he was drafted off intangibles. After initially struggling with the Bills, Josh has since become one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, leading the Bills to the playoffs and nearly the Super Bowl multiple times after he was named their opening day starter in 2019. He's played in just one AFC Championship game, but would like to be a lot better if it weren't for beating the Chiefs in the divisional round of the playoffs pretty much each and every year. So far, he has a record of 67-32 as a starter and 24,000 regular season passing yards. He's the best quarterback the Bills have had since Jim Kelly, and many wonder if Allen could have been a lot better at Wyoming. Okay, so the last quarterback we need to talk about is Hawaii's Cole McDonald back in 2020. The last quarterback drafted from the Rainbow Warriors was Cole, and after starring for Sonora High School, he ended up committing to Hawaii and head coach Nick Rolovic in 2016 instead of playing junior college ball. After redshirting his freshman year in 2016, he was a package quarterback his second year in 2017, mostly used to run the football. In 2018, he was named the starter for the Warriors and ended up throwing for 3,800 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 10 picks. He also added over 300 yards on the ground. As a senior, he went crazy, throwing for over 4,000 yards with 33 scores and 14 picks. He also ran for 7 more on the ground and was named a second-team All-Mountain West selection. He was then selected by the Tennessee Titans in the 7th round of the 2020 draft, and he was seen as a perennial potential backup. But he was cut early on from the team and spent the 2020 season out of the NFL. He spent a few weeks with the Cardinals in 2021, and then ended up with Toronto for the CFL for their 2021 season. He ended up completing 4 of 8 pass attempts for 45 yards and a pick, and then was cut out of the CFL. After a failed comeback attempt in the XFL, he tried out for the CFL again, but didn't make the team, and he's currently out of football. So yeah, today we went through the Mountain West and talked about the last time each and every one of them had a quarterback drafted, and honestly, there was a lot of surprises. But in your opinion, what was the biggest surprise on the list? What conference should I do next? And what topic should I cover next on the channel? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all of the videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.